Hello class, I am making these videos for the week of April 6th. We have spring break, but I'm making them early in case mom or dad want you to work on them during spring break. So, good to be with you again. I love doing these videos. It's not the same as teaching you in person, but I can almost picture you sitting in my house. Let's go ahead and pray, and then we're going to go through the lesson plan for the week and then move on to our math lesson. God, thank you so much for your love and your care for us. God, we know that you're in charge of all things and that none of this surprised you. And even though we are at home and wish we could be at school sometimes, we know that you are good. And so we ask that you help us at home to continue to learn and grow, not so that we can just be smart or smarter, but because we love you and we love the world that you created and how it points to you. Help us today. Help us to be clear in our understanding. Help me to be clear in my teaching. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, students, I'm going to go through the lesson plan for Monday and Tuesday in this video. And parents, if you're listening, this may be helpful for you too. This week we're going to be doing our timesheets. I do not need those handed in to me, but what I would like is for you to score them. And that is in handouts. And again, just a reminder, the reason we do these is so that we can do math with mastery and fluidity. And as we get to know these, we can feel more freedom to do math as we continue to grow. So Monday, I have you doing addition, and Wednesday, subtraction. Again, these are 2-minute tests. And mastery would be considered about 20 per minute. So grading scales there, as well as details on how to conduct those. Today and tomorrow for math, we're going to be focusing on comparing fractions, and then the next 2 days we'll do something else with fractions. The other thing to note is we're going to have a short quiz on Thursday. It is going to be based on your mental math sheet that I posted as an optional way to review. But this week, in order to prepare, I would highly recommend going through Mental Math 25, that column, because that's going to help you know and prepare for the test. And the test will be 10 of those questions from Mental Math 25. I shouldn't call it a test, a quiz. First language lessons, follow along. We have a dictionary skills this week. Of course, none of that gets handed into me. Writing with ease. Instead of writing with ease, we're implementing dictation and narration in other ways by narrating Secret Garden, at least one chapter that week, and that's an oral narration, just what happened first, what happened in the middle, and what happened at the end. And then dictation, I want you to, for Spell to Write and Read, to dictate a couple of sentences that you create as a co-teacher by using the spelling words, and then let the kids create their own sentences through original sentences. So that's how we'll take care of narration dictation. Please remember to review phonograms and rules. You should all have flashcards at home. If you want to do phonogram bingo, you can make your own bingo cards, and there's also things online that you can do for free, and I've done that before, and that's a fun way to review for phonograms. The rules and the phonograms, if you want to do a different way of looking at the list of them, they have them listed in the back of your WISE Guide, that brown book. And so sometimes with rules, if I don't want to do flashcards, I can have the kids do, I'll start off a rule and I'll just say like the first part and see if they can finish it. Sometimes we do competitions too. And so if you have multiple kids that are in SWR, you can maybe say the first few words and see which one dings first, and they get to finish the rule. History, we're going to be reading about the Ottoman Empire, and so there's a map and discussion questions. Keep going through your note cards, as well as European geography. We will have a quiz on that in April. I think it's the 14th. It's the Tuesday. Let me just double check. I have it written on here. Next Tuesday. So it's going to be that blank country map and then a list of countries. And so that's even posted in handouts, so you can practice doing that this week, as well as doing Cetera online if you've been doing that. And then just review chapter 27 for Latin and keep going back and making sure all of those sheets are done so that your students can continue to grow in their knowledge of Latin. I'm also sending out soon how we're going to move forward in April, just so that you kind of have a better picture for the month that lies ahead and how we're streamlining things. And so make sure you read that document carefully. And then along with lesson plans, I've heard a positive report that you've enjoyed having that checklist. And so I'll make those for you too, so that you can just double check and have it as another resource. Okay, let's move on to math. So we've been talking about fractions, and today and tomorrow we're going to be discussing comparing fractions. Now, we discussed terminology last week. And do you remember when we talked about a fraction? Let's say we wanted to talk about the fraction 3/5. We called the top part what? Numerator. So in this case, 3 would be the numerator. And the number on the bottom, which is 5 in this case, would be called what? The denominator. That's right. So this is a review of what you already learned last week, and we're going to add a few new things to it. So as we start our lesson, I want you to get your textbooks out, and we're going to turn to page 67. It should look like this, and there are the words numerator and denominator. They chose to use the fraction 3/4. So 3 in that case would be the numerator, 4 would be the denominator. Let's go through these really quickly, because I think we may understand this concept. But in letter A, they have the fraction 2/5. Which one is the numerator and which one is the denominator? Think about it. Okay, 2 is the numerator, 5 is the denominator. How about B, 4/10? Which one is the numerator? Which one is the denominator? 4 is the numerator, 10 is the denominator. C, 6/7. Which one is the numerator and which one is the denominator? I hope you said 6 is the numerator and 7 is the denominator. And lastly, D, 6/9. Which one is the numerator? 6. And which one is the denominator? 9. Okay. If you are still foggy on that, you may want to ask a parent. I'll write it on the board just as a reminder. Numerator on top, denominator on the bottom. Okay, so now we're going to be comparing fractions to see which ones are greater and which ones are smaller. Okay, so put on your thinking caps. I'm going to discuss this first. So some of your parents may have printed off handouts that I've posted, and they're called fraction bars, okay? Mine are colored and magnetic, and I actually really like these. And if your parents wanted to get them for the future, I do highly recommend them. But there's also a paper that I've posted that you can print off, and you can play around with these at home, okay? So with these fraction bars, I'm going to show you different fractions. On the way bottom, I have 1/12, okay? Then I have tenths, 1/10. Now I have 1/8. I have 1/6. I don't know where my 1/9 went. I have 1/5. I have 1/4. I have 1/3. I have 1/2, and then I have a whole. So I'm just going to scooch these up, because the important thing for me right now is that you look at these fractions, okay? I'm going to space them out just a little bit and put them in some order here, okay? Now, which one, I'm going to pull you a little closer so you can see. Which one is the smallest? It's the pink one, and it's hard to see, so I'm going to put it up close. That is 1/12. Okay? The next one, the next larger one, is 1/10. I don't know why I don't have my 1/9, but then the next one is 1/8. Then the next bigger one is what? 1/5. And then the next bigger one is what? 1/4. Are we seeing a pattern here? Oops, and I forgot to do this one. Sorry. 1/6 should be right over here. Excuse me. And then I have 1/4. And then what's the next bigger one? 1/3. And then what's the biggest one? 1/2. Look at the denominator in each of these. It goes in this order. 1/12, 1/10. If we had 1/9, it would be like that. 1/8. If we had 1/7, 1/6. Let me erase this. 1/5, 1/4, 1/3, 1/2. This is the biggest. This one is the smallest, right? This is my smallest. 1/12. This is my biggest. 1/2. What do you notice? It feels a little strange to say this, but if you look at the denominator, the smallest fraction has the largest denominator, 1/12. The largest fraction, if you look at the denominator, is 2. And remember, this is the smallest fraction, and this is the greatest fraction. Isn't that interesting? Now, I'm going to go ahead and erase this, but you can see these bars right here as I teach, okay? So let's talk a little bit. When we're comparing fractions, we want to know which one is larger, okay? So we just discussed this. We talked about a fraction like 1/5 and 1/3, okay? Here is 1/5 and here is 1/3. Which one is larger? I hope you all said 1/3. 1/3 is larger than 1/5, or 1/5 is smaller than 1/3. Remember our alligator mouth? Alligator wants to eat the most, so we say 1/5 is less than 1/3. Now, what do we do if we end up, excuse me for a second, and if you notice, this was number 5 we just talked about, right? And you can see the pictures, 1/5 or 1/3. But what do we do with something like number 6, where it says, which is greater, 3/4 or 3/5? Do you see that they have not 1s above them in the numerators, but they have 3s? Well, let's talk about it this way. Here, I have different fractions. They're the same size, but this is broken up into thirds, and this is broken up into fifths. How about if I wanted to compare 2/5 and 2/3? Well, let me color this in. Here's my 2/3, 2 out of my 3, and then here are my 2/5. Which one is going to be greater? That's right, 2/3. Notice the numerator is the same. It's the denominator that's different. And remember, we were talking about the pattern we saw in these denominators. When the denominator was large, it was the smaller fraction. When the denominator was smaller, it was the larger fraction. Okay, so 2/5 is going to be less than 2/3. Now, take a look on number 6. So which one is greater, 3/4 or 3/5? You can kind of tell by looking at the picture, can't you? But I want you to think about it too, because eventually you're not going to have pictures. But the greater one is 3/4. Do you see how more of it is colored in than over here? How about this next question for number 7? Which one is greater, 3/8 or 5/8? Well, comparing the two, I think you can tell. But before we move on to number 7, I just realized that was a little different. Let's stick with 5 or 6. What is similar about number 5 and number 6? The numerators are the same. The denominators are different, okay? So, I would ask you this, okay, with numerators that are the same and denominators that are different. If you are hungry and you got to choose between eating a whole, like this whole pizza, and they divide them up into slices. If you could choose to eat 3 out of those 4 slices, so you'd have a pizza like this, or if you could choose 3 out of sharing a pizza with 5 people, we'll pretend that's equal, and then this one you would get to eat 3. So you get 3 pieces out of 4 pieces, or 3 pieces out of 5 pieces. Which one would you rather eat? You would rather eat the 3 out of the 4 pieces if you're really hungry, right? Okay. But now, let's talk about something like number 7. Number 7 has the same denominator. Do you see? It says, which is greater, 3/8 or 5/8? Okay? There are 8 pieces of pizza and you're really hungry. Which one would you rather eat? I'd rather eat 5 pieces than 3 pieces. How about you? Yeah. So 3/8 is less than 5/8. Okay? Hold on. Let's turn the page, please, to page 68. Okay? We're going to practice these when they have similar numerators and similar denominators and talk about the differences. Let's go ahead and look at number 8 together on top of the page. And I'm going to make sure I'm following along here. Okay. The fractions 3/5, 3/6, and 3/10 have a common numerator. Do you see that? 3, 3, and 3. Look what that guy is telling us before we move on to the problem. He's saying it is easy to compare fractions when they have a common numerator or a common denominator, okay? So we're looking in this instance of all common numerators, the number on top. They're all 3. Which one, 3/5, 3/6, or 3/10, would be the smaller fraction, or the smallest fraction, I should say? Which one? I hope you said 3/10. They even showed you, here are your 10 pieces, and you would eat 3 out of those 10 pieces. Which one is the greatest fraction? That's right, 3/5 would be the greatest fraction. You can tell by the picture. But remember, when they all have the same numerator, you look at the denominators, just like these bars. And the bigger the denominator, the smaller the fraction if they all have the same numerator. Okay? Now, look at number 9. Instead of being all the same numerator, they have all the same denominator. So the fractions of 3/9, 5/9, and 7/9 have a common denominator. Which one is the smallest fraction? Think about a pizza being divided into 9 pieces. Which one is the smallest fraction? 3/9 would be the smallest, right? 3 pieces out of 9 is small. But which one is the greatest fraction? And I think you can tell 7/9 is the greatest fraction. Now remember how I said eventually they're going to move away from pictures? I want to show you. Take a look at number 10. Here they're telling you arrange the fractions in order, but start with the smallest. So you need to put on your thinking caps and think, what number is the same? Is the numerator the same or the denominator? Okay, so let's take a look at letter A. 1/5, 1/7, and 1/3. What is the same, the numerator or the denominator? The numerator is all the same, 1, 1, 1. So now we have denominators of 5, 7, and 3. 1/5, 1/7, and 1/3. Let's put those in order. Do you remember what we talked about when we said we had denominators that were different but numerators were the same? What one would be the smallest? 1/7 is actually the one with the larger denominator. So then which one is the next biggest fraction? That's right. And which one is the largest of them all? 1/3. I'm going to give you a couple seconds. I want you to try B. They all have the same numerator. It's 2. So you have to look at the denominators. How would you list those fractions from smallest to largest with different denominators? You can even look up here if you need a reminder. Okay. See if you got it right. Did you do 2/9, 2/7, and 2/3? Remember, these are the smaller ones. With the larger denominators, they're going to be your smaller ones when they're all the same numerator. Now look at C. They've switched it on you. We don't have the same numerator. We have the same denominator. Okay. They're all 8s. We have 5/8, 7/8, 4/8. Let's put those in order from smallest to largest. The smallest one out of 8, if you're hungry and you get to eat, there's a pizza of 8 pieces and Mom says you can eat either 4/8, 5/8, or 7/8 of a pizza. What would you say? I think you'd want the bigger one, right? So which one would be the smaller then? 4/8. Then which one is next? 5/8. And then which one is the largest? That's right. If you're really hungry, you're going to want 7 out of those 8 pizzas, right? Or slices of pizza. Why don't you try D? If you look carefully, they're all different numerators, but they're all the same denominators, much like C. Think that one through before I write. Okay, let's put them in order. 4 out of 12 pieces would be the smallest. And then 5 out of 12 pieces would be the next smallest, or next larger one. And then 9 out of the 12 pieces would be the largest, right? Okay, so I've set you up so that we set you up so that you could do both exercises. So for Monday, you're going to do exercise 29. Here you're comparing fractions, and they even did pictures for you to start, okay? So this is them training you to start thinking about pieces and parts and fractions, okay? So you want to compare and see what you have, okay? Will you please read the directions carefully, though, because the first one, they say circle the greater fraction. For number 2, it says circle the smaller fraction. If you turn the page, they want you to circle the greatest fraction. And then for number 4, they want you to circle the smallest. So they're not really tricking you. They're just wanting you to read directions carefully. Now for 5 and 6, it's going to be arranging these numbers, okay? So read carefully, because number 5 is going to say arrange the numbers in order beginning with the smallest. And then number 6, it's going to say arrange the numbers in order beginning with the greatest. Remember which ones have the same numerators and which ones have the same denominators. If you get stuck, start thinking about being really hungry and eating pizza. That's what I do. Thanks. I think that's going to be it for today. I'll make a video for the next lesson. If you have any questions, please be sure to ask a co-teacher or go back through these pages again. They're very, very helpful. if you somehow get things switched and mixed up in your mind, it's okay to go back and change some things around as long as you understand, okay? Hope you have a wonderful day. I'm excited to maybe see your faces sometime. We could maybe, well, I'll send a video. This is, of course, a video, but it would be really fun if it would ever work to do a Zoom sometime with all of us. But I know sometimes that's difficult to plan too, so we may just have to wait till it happens in person. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.